The seas are a little choppy today. A little more wave action going on. But consider that a bonus. That's like Oceanside DLC. Extra wave sounds. Let's get back to the book I wrote about a video game. The Hotel Lobby. Speaking of depressing moments which help you appreciate the present, which is, I guess that's what we were talking about, we use a plank to head across the flooded street and into the hotel. I think the flooded hotel lobby is real pretty. I love this room, maybe more than any other space in the game. Joel mentions that this hotel would have been too rich for his blood, and Ellie pretends to check in. Being here makes the enormity of how much has been lost seem really clear. Even in this dilapidated state, it's still amazing to see. It's nice that a place like this ever existed, even if it is over now. On my first playthrough, I missed the training manual in this section, which lets you get multiple hits out of your shivs. Missing that manual weighed on me for the rest of that playthrough. On my first time through, those shivs really seemed like everything. The hotel hallways. A little further into the hotel, we overhear some hunters. You bit? Not today. You? Not today. I like the fatalism of how "not today" has become a common turn of phrase. Nobody got bit today, but it's understood that it's gonna happen, and probably soon. I get punched by a hunter, and I'm trying to decide if I should restart the encounter. I only took one punch, and maybe things would be more exciting if I just roll with whatever happens. But I'm worried of ending up somewhere brutal, like Ish's sewer, and not having enough life to brute force my way past. The choice is made for me because after the scrimmage, I somehow end up stuck shin deep inside a pile of laundry. I can't move at all. It's the first time I've ever gotten caught on the level architecture. But it came at a good time, so a restart it is. Man, I'm trying to find some place to put down this bottle of water I've got. And it's times like this when you realize that there are no flat spaces in nature sometimes. Like, I want to leave the cap off this bottle just so I can easily drink it without having to take the stupid cap off every time. Since I've got a recorder in one hand and a fucking smartphone in the other. But there's nowhere to put this thing. Everything's rocks. Ah, fuck, come on, there has to be one spot. What the shit, Mother Nature? Alright. We head deeper into the hotel, and the line of sight of these enemies really doesn't make much sense. As long as you're crouched behind something, and you stay right up against it, they won't see you. Even if they're standing on the other side and looking right at you, they'll be too polite to mention it. It's pretty eerie when a dude is staring you down and then just walks away. Maybe he wants to get killed. Maybe we've just entered into a silent pact. After a couple of failed attempts, I managed to make it through the whole hotel while only having to choke out 3 people. Not bad, I'm barely a murderer. Man, if this game were designed to be played weaponless, it would be the weirdest game ever. Post-apocalypse choker. The story of a man who choked his way across America. Rated Peggy 18 for multiple motiveless killings. Elevator shaft. That's my most inspired chapter title ever. We get to an elevator shaft, and Joel falls the fuck down it. I didn't watch a ton of pre-release videos about The Last of Us, but I definitely saw this part. I expected the game overall to be more like a reskinned Uncharted, with a ton of scripted falling and tumbling and whatnot. The Uncharted games are like a series of spikes with a lot of ups and downs. The Last of Us feels more like a flat plane, just a continuous trudge forward. I don't take any damage from that fall, so that's nice. I'm still at 4 out of 5 health. Ellie is alone at the top of the elevator shaft and yells, "I'm gonna climb down there, okay?" But Joel tells her to stay put. It must be scary for her being up there all alone. That hotel is full of goons, and they must have heard that noise. Having to find some place to hide, and then just waiting? That's pretty frightening. It's better that she didn't come down, though, based on all the fucking infected I'm about to run into. Joel talks to himself quite a lot as he makes his way through the basement, which is a huge pet peeve of mine in all media. But again, Naughty Dog takes the terrible and makes it okay. It's a relatively short segment, which probably helps, but Moron Babble, also known as Lara Croft's Logorrhea. Lara Croft talked to herself so much in the 2013 Tomb Raider that I could have killed myself. It was always the dopiest, most moronic phrases. Even a person with a predilection toward talking to themselves would never say half the crap that tumbled out of that lady's face. I guess it was a way to avoid quest arrows and text pop-ups, but it sure didn't work. In cases like that, I sometimes try to pretend that the character is drunk. Come to think of it, I'm pretty sure that every character in the history of media is actually pretty wasted, or at least has a good buzz on. Nobody in life speaks their mind like characters do in a story. I could have swore I had more about Lara Croft, but instead of getting into it now and then realizing that it's just coming later in the book, I'm gonna wait and presume that it comes later in the book. Drowning. I mess up this underwater section pretty good and run out of air. Joel takes a little drowning damage, so I decide to wait for him to fully drown and try again. The drowning damage seems to get smaller and smaller as Joel approaches death. This game really doesn't want you to drown. That's nice of it. If you were swimming along and just barely made it out of the water alive, that'd feel pretty badass. It's fucking annoying when you're trying to drown yourself, though. Let me die, Last of Us. It's my right. You can't force me to suffer! Grounded mode. I did this book's itemless playthrough before the release of Grounded mode. If you can fucking imagine that. That's how long ago I started writing this goddamn book. But I later tried Grounded mode on my friend Craig's PS4. I also did the original itemless run on his PS3. So Craig deserves a special benefactor thanks for sure. I fired up Grounded difficulty and started plowing through the game as quickly as I could. I didn't play itemless, but I didn't search areas properly, and I left a lot of items behind because, frankly, I'd gotten pretty full of myself. If I didn't need items on Survivor difficulty, how much worse could Grounded be? Let me tell you, Grounded is pretty damn hard. In my first play session, I made it to this section, the basement generator, and then I died a shitload of times. It eventually got kind of embarrassing, so I just hung up the controller until another day. Grounded mode removes on-screen indicators, so you can't easily tell how much life you have left. That turns out not to matter too much, because nearly everything kills you in one hit anyway. If you get shot and live, you can count yourself lucky. At full life, things aren't quite so deadly, but since you can never tell how much life you have, you end up running around half dead most of the time. Every enemy becomes like a clicker, including the humans, because if they get their hands on you, you're fucking dead. However, despite an occasional choke point, Grounded mode was clearly easier than my itemless playthrough. Having bricks and guns at my disposal felt like I'd activated a cheat code. As for the idea of an itemless Grounded mode playthrough, get out of here. That would be ridiculous. 30 frames per second. After the Grounded playthrough, I did yet another playthrough back on the PlayStation 3, and this time I played with the gore option turned off, just to check it out. And also because I apparently have nothing better to do than to play The Last of Us over and over. I was surprised by how easily I returned to the PS3 version. Last of Us Remastered looks amazing, but the PS3 version looks amazing as well. Once you've hit amazing status, the specific gradations don't matter too much. If you're worried about playing The Last of Us on PS3 now that Remastered is available, don't sweat it. Both versions hold up great, but again, I was writing this at the dawn of the PS4 era. I don't think anybody's playing this shit on PS3 anymore. But if you do, for nostalgia's sake, yeah, it's still rad. Honestly, looking back, I kind of like the PS3 version better. I don't know, it's just that's where it belongs. That's where it was native. That's where it's most impressive. You're like, wow, this was a PS3 game. But I noticed something odd about the 30 frames per second mode on PlayStation 4. It's meant to emulate the 30 frames per second presentation of the PS3 release, but to me it looks much worse. 30 frames per second on PlayStation 3 looks fantastic, while 30 frames per second on PlayStation 4 makes Joel seem like a stoned guy having a seizure. It's like the PS4 version is slandering the PS3 version. Were they trying to convince everyone that 30 frames per second on PS3 sucked when it didn't? Did I have some TV settings set up wrong? I'm really not sure what was going on, but 30 frames per second on PS4 really looks like crap. The hotel basement. A bunch of rats are driven toward Joel as he enters a spore-filled area of the hotel basement. It's a nice touch, but I'm not sure what they're specifically afraid of. It must be the disappearing, reappearing bloater. If you head to the second floor and grab the key card, you'll see an infected run past the door as you turn around. The Last of Us doesn't pull these horror game tricks very often, but it's a nice touch here. I hate these infected that start their life running around all crazily. Stalkers, I guess? But they ain't stalking, they're going fucking hog wild. There are only 4 of them here, but the timing to get the first punch on them is brutal. They're very erratic, and presumably the player is meant to use a gun. It seems to help if you run toward them before punching, because if they come to you, they get a chance to hit you with a big clubbing swing. But I'm not sure if running really does help, or if I just happen to get some lucky hits. During one of my attempts to box these assholes, I managed to punch one right through the floor. The camera follows him for some reason and stays hovering down around my feet. Then the camera drifts back up as the infected runs up the incline to the second floor. It's pretty weird. Once I punch all these assholes, I head for the generator. If you try to fire up the Jenny without clearing the area, the infected will run up behind you and bite your face! Ah! Zombies! Apparently, you can pull start generators with one button press if you hit right when the indicator is on the little line. Sort of like playing great golf on the Sega Master System, a reference that I'm sure we can all appreciate. I've never managed to do the one pull start on a generator, but it's a cool feature. Maybe on a one pull you could start the generator without getting bitten by infected? If someone else ever writes a Last of Us book, try that out for me. Man, that's one thing I'm surprised about too. I mean that, it took me a long time to write this book, and then it took a long time for me to do this audio version. I mean, at this point, we're quite a few years past the release of what is arguably the greatest game of the PS3 generation. And yeah, nobody else wrote a book about it. I don't know. Just seems weird. Seems like somebody would have. Probably someone more scholarly and informed than me, but also more boring. That's what I'm guessing. Whenever there is a book, when Boss Fight Books gets around to it, no disrespect. Except for the Super Mario 2 boss fight books, because that one sucks. But yeah, I bet it's going to be a real drag. I bet it's going to be a well-informed drag, as opposed to my random-ass nonsense book. But I don't know. I'm a fan. That's what I'm saying. I'm a fan of my own book, all right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm a douchebag, and I'm sorry I'm rambling. So I've got my key card. The area is clear. I crank up the generator, and I take a wrong turn. I end up climbing some stairs I don't usually take, and I don't quite know where I am. The screen suddenly shakes from the magically appearing bloater, throwing spore bombs my way. So I book it, and in my panic, I run all the way to the keycard door and don't see a single enemy. Maybe no new enemies spawn alongside the bloater, and I'd just never taken the time to kill them all before? Or maybe I just got lucky, I don't know. Could be anything. Again, ill-informed this book is. What is this, the Brady Games Guide to The Last of Us? If it was, I remember this. See, this is what I thought was funny. Okay, what is this? The Brady Games Guide to The Last of Us? If it was, would it include the phrase 10 million liters of snot and puke were fired into the face of a maggot-filled bear corpse that's been sitting on the counter of a convenience store while people uncomfortably tried to buy sundries without touching it? Pretty fucking unlikely, my lad. It probably wouldn't even contain the phrase, my lad. But this book sure does. This book has both. Followed by an editor's note. This should be good. Editor's note. It's weird to write something, forget that you wrote it, and then come back months later to give it the old once-over. Apparently, I thought that was funny at one point. Well, too late to fix it now. Additional editor's note. It's not too late. You could change it any time. Original editor's note. Hey, fuck you, buddy. Next section. Yeah, you know, this book might be terrible, but at least I stand by it. Ellie's first murder. Back in the hotel proper, Joel takes out some dudes, sets up a ladder, climbs up the ladder, and gets kicked off the ladder. The kickee then tries to drown Joel in a shallow pool of water. The way Joel scrambles for his gun, his arm getting more erratic, the bad guy grabbing at Joel's arm and finally pinning it, that's really well done. Joel is totally done for. Isn't it weird those moments when you know a character's not going to die, but you still kind of feel like they might die? Like at the end of the first Avengers movie when fucking Iron Man takes that nuke through the portal. And just for a moment, it's like, holy shit, is Iron Man going to die? It's like, of course fucking Iron Man isn't going to die. But just for a moment, you know? Then Ellie grabs the gun and shoots the guy. Kablamo is my onomatopoeia for that event. At this point, Joel and Ellie are clearly a team. They are deep into this journey and wouldn't have survived this long without each other. But Joel is still trying to deny it. He expresses this denial through the medium of gruff Texas jerky manness. Getting yelled at for saving Joel's life is definitely not the reunion Ellie was anticipating. Joel tells her she should have held back like he told her, and that it's too dangerous for her to have a gun. He goes off to check out a side section, saying, "Stay there, okay?" "Sure, Joel." Ellie sounds perfectly disdainful, and when Joel comes back, she's not just standing around like a regular video game character would. Instead, she's sitting on a table, waiting. It's a small detail, but damn, it's so good. This game is so good. So good. Man, isn't it great when stuff is good? There's so much stuff in the world that sucks. Just a huge, heavy mass of sucky stuff. Weighing down everything, being sucky. Then, once in a while, something comes out that's super good. And it's such a nice feeling. It just feels nice, you know? It's just real nice. The ballroom. Joel and Ellie continue exploring, and Ellie says, "Just tell me where to go." Joel mutters, "I hate this crap," clearly referring to having to deal with the emotions of another person. I bet he hates doing that more than he hates the apocalypse. He's actually dealing with the apocalypse pretty well, all things considered. This hotel ballroom reminds me a lot of the ship in Uncharted 3. You play that game, Joel? No? You, Ellie? Well, fine. Why don't I just go fuck myself then? Yet another case of, weird potential pseudo-humor that doesn't come across in an audio environment. Ellie tries to explain herself, saying she wasn't trying to disobey Joel. He just seemed to be in a bad spot and she was trying to help. I can see why Ellie's so pissed. There's nothing worse than having to explain yourself to somebody when you really haven't done anything wrong. It's some real power trip bullshit. There's a definite limit to how long you can deal with people who are like that. Though I guess having to rely on them to keep you alive during the apocalypse probably extends that time by quite a bit. Ellie gets armed. We come upon an open square and Joel gives Ellie a rifle, telling her to watch over him. This is one of my favorite cutscenes. The way Joel explains the gun really feels like how a Texan guy would explain a gun. He lays it out casually as something he's just comfortable with. Just tug it. Of course, I'm saying this as a Canadian who doesn't know shit about guns or anything else, including Canada. Joel says that if he gets into trouble, she needs to make every shot count. Ellie looks straight at him and says, "I got this." God damn, that is so badass. Fuck Kratos and all these other tough characters. Those motherfuckers are just silly. I want to be badass the way that Ellie is badass. The idea here is that Ellie won't fire until Joel gets spotted. Then she'll supply backup. This fight is a kick in the dick at the best of times, so using my bare hands here is going to be tough. Joel creeps onto the battlefield and hears the hunters freaking out about how many of their crew are dead. This one tourist killed him! What the fuck? It is somewhat unlikely that Joel would be able to take out so many people, but I like how the story acknowledges it. After all, this is the guy who will arguably cause the downfall of the entire human race. I think it's fair to grant him some minor mythic status. I had an easier time navigating this arena once I realized that you could climb up the truck at the back. At first, I thought the back section was a dead end, making it a terrible place to get caught. But you can climb up the truck and onto the second floor walkway, completing the loop around the level. Once I sorted that out, this became one of my favorite fights. I head to that back area and find some little birds on a grill. These guys were setting up for a barbecue. Hey guys, sorry I'm gonna ruin your party by killing you. I take out 4 guys before they finally find one of the corpses. That breaks them into a tracking pattern, and they start slowly stalking me. I've said this before, but this game is so much better without listen mode. It feels so much more tense. I still occasionally catch myself edging my actual body upward to try to look over cover. A dude is perched at the corner of the second floor walkway, and I'm watching him quietly through the window. Then there's a sudden spray of blood as Ellie shoots him. Bam! I did not expect that. It's a shame this sniper dynamic doesn't get used more often, because I like it. I love how visually open this arena is. If you're hesitant about giving up listen mode, this is a good area to test out. You can see people across the open square and through all the broken windows. You can stalk your enemies, figuring out where they're going, then intercept them. It's fucking great. In stealth games, a third-person perspective definitely seems to work better than first-person. You can see over cover or around corners because of the detached camera. First-person requires some weird shit, like allowing the player to lean around corners while somehow remaining invisible. The third-person perspective, while also unreal, feels more natural to me overall. I'm amazed how well I'm doing without guns. I really love the hunting rifle, and this is a perfect place for it. You can use its zoom to pop a guy from a distance, then go hide, rinse and repeat. But now, my hunting rifle is my fist. And my scope is also my fist. Whoop, they caught me. I take a hit from a piece of wood, but that's acceptable. Then I hear a guy say, "Fire in the hole!" What the fuck does that mean? And suddenly I catch fire from a Molotov explosion. I should have guessed that that's what that meant. Trying to die. By now I've realized that manually restarting an encounter will erase my mid-battle checkpoint. So I opt to let myself die instead. It doesn't seem like you can die from fall damage, because I'm pretty weak, but a fall from the second floor doesn't get me. Waiting to be killed feels really weird. I'm almost dead, so I go stand right in the middle of the arena. Somehow, it takes ages for someone to find me and put me out of my misery. To be fair, I guess none of the enemies would really expect me to just stand out in the open. Resurrection! The scenario has reset to before I was initially spotted. It must be killing Ellie, sitting up there with her sights trained on some jerk's head, but not being allowed to pull the trigger. Luckily, I get seen pretty quickly, so she doesn't have to resist firing for too long. I'm hiding in the second floor building, in the corner, which is a somewhat lame thing to do. I'm just waiting for people to jump through the windows so I can choke them. It's more effective than direct confrontation, but not as good as stalking individual bad guys. I'm not sure why I'm doing it, actually. I'm just feeling kind of wussy. I think that's how I beat this level the first time. Like entirely, I just waited for people to jump through those windows. Not very cool. A dude with a club jumps through the window, and I tense up, getting ready to strike. Then a Molotov comes sailing from I don't know where the fuck, through the far window and all the way across the room, exploding only a little ways away from me. That's awesome. I've never seen that before. I decide I better run away, and I take some fall damage in my haste because I was kind of freaking the fuck out. This fight is starting to unravel my brain. In my next encounter, I learn that the enemy's whoa stumbling back animation really doesn't mean shit. A dude still manages to punch me right in the face despite being in a state of stumbling shock. I'm getting fucking tenderized here. Still fighting. The enemies don't act completely independently. They definitely drift toward the player's general location. If you're at one end of the map, you can assume that nobody will be on the other side. Instead, the enemies will be gathered in your general vicinity. These last few guys are in a real clump. I gotta find a way to get them away from each other. Man, speaking of that, just because I don't have the fucking bricks and bottles and shit. I don't know if it's just me, but man, every time I play a modern Far Cry game, I always forget that you can throw rocks. They give you the little tutorial at the start that you can throw a rock, and then I forget that I can throw a rock for the next 70 hours. It just seems weird to me that's a thing you can do. You can fudge the rules of stealth in The Last of Us pretty far. If 4 guys are walking, all on high alert, and you grab the one in the back of the Congo line and grossly choke him to death, the other 3 won't notice. Their peripheral vision and peripheral hearing is total crap. Though if they're on a second floor, they can see below themselves surprisingly well. Given their normal tunnel vision, that one always surprises me. These last few enemies are fucking me so hard. It's taking me so many tries. The enemy dialogue does give away that the game ultimately knows where I am. Enemies will only say things like, "I'm gonna check upstairs," if I happen to be upstairs. But it somehow still doesn't feel artificial. I really don't know how Naughty Dog pulled that off. And it looks like you can die from fall damage after all, as I just did. Good to know. I get grabbed from behind by a guy, and someone else shoots me in the head. I wince, cause man, that is pretty fucking brutal. After all this time, the violence in this game can still get me. On my next life, I punch a Molotov man right through a wall. Boom! This game is bugging out on me a lot more than it did during my other playthroughs. I'm definitely stressing the hand-to-hand mechanic much more than was intended. Finally killing these pricks. Ultimately, I take 2 points of damage. 1 from falling, and 1 from getting punched in my head. But I decide to accept it and move on. I really like that battle, it's a lot of fun, but to do it perfectly would take way too many tries. I'm just gonna accept my battering and move on, as I said. That's an example of bad writing. Should I go back and fix that? Nah, fuck it, I'm gonna leave it. I have 2 health points left. Hopefully that's low enough for Ellie to scrounge me up a health pack before I get to Ish's sewers. Or maybe my life bar will reset when I wake up on the beach? In the post-battle cutscene, Joel gives Ellie her own pistol. It's a nice moment. He trusts her with a gun, which in Texas symbology means he trusts her as a person. They're a team now, a partnership. But Joel is definitely still the head honcho. He doesn't give Ellie one of his nice, well-maintained guns. Instead, he takes a random gun off a corpse. She watches him take the gun right out of this dead jerk's hand, then hand it to her, acting all magnanimous. She could have pulled a gun off any of the corpses they passed. She could have a fucking backpack full of guns by now. I keep thinking of Far Cry 2, and how any guns you take off enemies are total pieces of shit. They're gonna jam up and you're gonna die. So, thanks, Joel. Get your head out of the Far Cry 3 clouds, because this is the Far Cry 2 reality. Man, I'm getting so good at reading audiobooks, right? The annoyingness of reality. I know I'm in the minority with this opinion, but I love it when equipment fails in video games. What if, one time, at some random point, Ellie's gun wouldn't fire? She'd say, "Fuck!" and have to take a moment to fix it? I think that would be awesome. I'd also love to play an Uncharted-style game where the character has a bad knee. You'd be crossing a rope bridge over a huge chasm and have to go so slowly because your leg might give out. Like you're the guy from Kentucky Route Zero with the bad leg, but you gotta do Indiana Jones shit. I think that'd rule. Power fantasies suck. They are so boring. Surviving through a disempowerment fantasy? That's what's cool. Here's another opportunity for me to say something off the cuff that is probably in this book somewhere. But I remember one of my earlier attempts at learning how much I like playing games on hard was I went back to Fallout 3 on the PS3. I was playing it on my roommate's TV, and it was cool because I switched it to black and white and cranked up the contrast. That's something that it's very hard to do on a PC. That's one thing that's nice about TVs is I like playing games in black and white. Sometimes it just, if you've already played the game before, it's just cool. It feels like a cool art movie version of the game. But I also decided not to fast travel. I think I might have eventually given up on that because it really does take forever. But also to play on the hardest difficulty and to not use VATS. And it was so neat. I recommend all of this because Fallout 4, I'm not a fan of at all. Fallout 3 is a little less deep than you might remember. It's more like Fallout 4 than it is like New Vegas. Like going back, I was surprised by how action-y and shallow it actually is. I still love it, but I mean, New Vegas is the one for 3D Fallouts. It's the only one that holds up. But playing on hard with no VATS, it really changes things. Like all of a sudden, shotguns are actually good. You know, like they're actually handy. You see a rad scorpion and maybe you pop off a couple quick shots, and mostly I guess you just run away actually from rad scorpions. The shotgun's better for like if you see a raider and you get a couple quick shots, but then you basically have to run all the time. And like I remember I found this big building full of raiders off in the distance, and I pulled out my sniper rifle and I tried to fuck with them a bit, and then they started shooting back, and then they started coming after me. And I just had to run away. And I was amazed by how fun that was. Like, normally, under normal circumstances, you would kill all of those raiders and you would go search that building and get whatever dumb bullshit is in it, which is probably not anything that you really need. And instead, the idea of running away from that situation, it was better than what the normal game of Fallout 3 is. Like, it was way more compelling and way more engaging, and I really felt like an apocalypse survivor. Like, the way you survive the apocalypse is maybe you test the situation, you poke the bear a little bit to see if these people seem like something you can deal with. And as soon as you get overwhelmed, you run the fuck away, and you just hope that they can't find you. And it was so cool. It really kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, man, this is so much more fun than winning. So much more fun than killing these people. Like, way more fun. Way more like whatever is deep down in the human psyche, the survival psyche. The ability to just kill everybody, it's not realistic. It's not something that you can grip into. It's just like, well, whatever. This is clearly just a dream that I'm in. This is just some dumb power fantasy. Where the disempowerment fantasy is gripping. It's like, whoa, this is more like what it would be like. And it's like, it feeds that little part of your brain that even though this is all fake and it's just a video game, it feeds that little part of your brain that's like, if I was in this situation, under these insane odds, maybe I would make it. Maybe I could actually survive because I'm smart enough to run away. And it's such an awesome aspect of video games that is just not dealt with nearly often enough. And that kind of thing is what led me down this road to playing The Last of Us with fucking no items and shit. Even in Fallout, like, it was so much better not to be able to loot everything and to have limited inventory, because your inventory becomes so bloated so fast in those games, and it's just something you don't want to deal with anymore. Where when your inventory is limited, it helps the situation, it helps the simulation. It's like, this is a tough world. I only have so many things. It actually matters what I barter now. Yeah, just better, just so much better in every fucking way. I loved it. That's the true Fallout to me. Man, I really got to go back and play Fallout 1 and 2. Can't believe I've still never played those games. I bet I will love them. I can almost guarantee I will love them. I just really got to carve out the time and go do that. Relationship building. Plowing directly through Pittsburgh does seem a bit contrived, as there must be a less dangerous route. Or route, if you happen to be of that persuasion. You could probably make an argument for removing this section altogether, if you were some dick who wanted less The Last of Us for some reason. But this journey does help build the relationship between Joel and Ellie, even beyond the beats that are presented in the actual story. The literal amount of time spent between the two characters is important. Most relationships are built on doing mundane tasks together. Buying groceries, watching TV, taking classes, whatever. The everyday bonding activities in this world are more along the lines of hiking and scavenging, but it's the same principle. Movies and novels have a hard time portraying that kind of downtime without quickly becoming boring. But The Last of Us does a great job of displaying those smaller moments, and I think they add greatly to the overall experience. My first time finishing The Last of Us took something like 15 or 16 hours. It didn't take me that long, I hear you say. Yeah, because you played on normal. And you know how I feel about that, you little wiener. 15 hours is a pretty long time to spend with a character, and in a movie or novel, the dead spaces would feel interminable. In those mediums, the narrative needs to be addressed more or less constantly. It becomes exasperating to watch characters have small interactions, or even to simply walk places. But a video game can get away with expressing these small moments because the player remains actively engaged as they unfold. And during that downtime, the player's mind can draw connections between the characters or ponder the overall situation. The time spent can add greatly to an overall sense of immersion. Maintaining that kind of long-term, low-level storytelling is obviously not easy. See my opinion of 2013's Tomb Raider as an example of a game that utterly failed to do the same, and editor's note, Uncharted 4 as well. But Naughty Dog's work overall seems like a strong step forward, and a great example of how video games can forge a unique identity among the storytelling mediums. The length of a video game is generally well outside the length of a movie, and a season of television would never focus as exclusively on just two characters as a game like The Last of Us does. Cutscenes in games may be reminiscent of movies, and the written sections of games may be reminiscent of novels. But the ability to spend hours of time with a character, to observe their exciting times as well as their mundane times, while remaining engaged by both, that's something that I think only a video game can really accomplish. Granted, there are 4-hour-long movies and crushingly naturalistic books. These things exist, but they aren't good. They're boring. They're stunts. They're art films or literary novels. They're not playing to the true strengths of their medium. Some people claim to enjoy artsy, mind-numbing shit. But if we're being honest, they're really just trying to seem smart by championing things that most people find tedious. I really don't think the ability to stare at something for a long period of time is at all synonymous with being intelligent. I think it's probably more synonymous with being dropped on your head as a child. As things stand, most video games are obviously pretty shitty. But after so many years of being on the bottom of the artistic scrap heap, I think the potential of video games is finally starting to emerge. For long-form character studies, I think video games may honestly be the best medium for the job. Video games can tuck that medicine right into the applesauce. 15 hours of behavioral character building can happen in a video game without feeling at all ponderous. That's fucking amazing. Now, where were we? I believe our heroes were about to face off against some manner of killdozer? Am I talking about Shakespeare? Or a video game? Who can say? They're both so damn artistically legitimate. Hiding from the super truck. Joel and Ellie duck under a window as some people outside run from the super truck. The people running get mowed down, and their blood splashes backward rather than forward. Is that right? I guess if the bullets lodge in their bodies rather than passing through, the blood would splash out? I don't know shit about bullets. If I ever get a chance to shoot someone who's running, I'll keep a keen eye and write an update. Update about shooting someone who is fleeing will go here. May we pray this space never gets revised. Amen. You know, I heard a great quote somewhere the other day. I can't remember where this was, but I might steal it for a novel I'm working on. About, gun control, because it's a big difference between Canada and the States. And pro-gun people, they can make a lot of arguments that do make sense on a surface level. Like, yeah, you should be free. Most people don't abuse guns. Why should you not have them? Isn't it more dangerous to control something like that? Like, I can see their side of the argument. But the hippy-dippy, more cosmic, sort of eternally focused view, this is the quote, I love it. It's that this idea Americans have that I can hurt you without it hurting me. Oh, I remember what it was. It was that book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Yeah, it's that American view. Forgive me for painting with a broad brush, but I will. But that idea that, like, hey, someone's on my property, it's my right to hurt them. Or I have to protect myself, and the only way to protect myself is to make sure that I can fucking shoot you in the head. And it's like so weird because it's so ingrained in their culture, and it's so hard to get out of that mindset, and it just permeates everything. America really does feel radically different from other places. Like, if you live in America and you've never left, you gotta leave. You gotta leave. You gotta go live somewhere else for 6 months and just see what it's like. So when you come back to America, like, for the first time, you'll be able to feel the pressure. You'll be able to see the difference, because you can't see it if you're inside and you've never left. I don't care if you think you can. You can't. But I love that view, because that's way more how it feels in Canada, and presumably in places like England and fucking Australia and Japan, where they don't have guns everywhere. It's that there's this understanding that, yeah, there's occasional situations that are going to slip through the cracks, and times where you wish that you did have access to a gun because bad things happened and there was nothing you could do. but it's so statistically tiny, and what you're giving up is this social fabric, this idea that we are all in it together and that I can't hurt you without hurting me. That protectionist attitude, that violent attitude, it washes right back. It hurts you too. And it just makes you live in a whole world where you have crazy school shootings and people don't even care. It happens every month and people don't even care. But it's also conceptual, and if you grew up with the American view, like, how do you see outside of it? It must be so hard to do. It's so much easier for us because we grew up with this different mindset. But I don't know, but I like that saying. It seemed like such a good way to sum things up. It's like you can't hurt someone else without hurting yourself. And it's a hard thing to conceptualize and to understand when you have just grown up with like, no, it's my rights. My rights to have a gun, my right to fight, my right to breathe, my right. But you're just causing a society of misery. It's fucking nonsense. All right, sorry for the rambling. Where was I? Oh yeah, that's right. I was, because I was at the part about innocent people getting shot. Man, the tide is so fast around here. Like the water was really low and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm gonna have fucking tons of time to record today, but the fucking beach is halfway gone already. And this little spot that I'm on, like it really does, like the water comes all the way up and there's nowhere to go anymore. It's creepy. All right, so the hunters shoot bullets right into the body of these fleeing people. Isn't that gonna wreck their clothes? What if one of them has a cool coat? Isn't salvaging their stuff what this is all about? You dumb scavengers. Would it kill you to build a mousetrap style cage to lower onto them? You've got time, get creative. It's pretty fucked up to hunt someone down and not even get anything out of it. I guess they see it like hunting animals. They wouldn't feel bad about killing some deer, but at least David's group eat the people they catch. These hunters are just pricks. A real couple of goofballs. As the hunters pick over the corpses, one says, "Busy couple days, huh?" The other replies, "Whatever, man." Maybe that second guy is still feeling the weight of the situation. He doesn't want to discuss the nature of their work right after they've shot some innocent people. I guess that's a good reason not to shoot people. It makes you feel weird. It hurts your small talk. You know, not every point that I have to make in this book is really valuable or worthwhile. Maybe most of them. I noticed that my health bar is blinking. Slightly red. That's gotta mean I'm injured enough for Ellie to potentially find me a health pack. Fingers crossed. Can't pick up any health packs myself, you see, because it's the super apocalypse. Find me a health pack, Ellie. Just one health pack. We come to a bookstore across the street from a bombed-out 2-story building. This was the first area where I noticed how well enemies can see below themselves. There he is! Crouched behind the car like an idiot! Let's shoot him! That's paraphrased dialogue. As I'm skulking around, Ellie gives me a health pack! Yeah! That's extra handy because I take a couple more punches during this section, bringing my health bar all the way down to 1 out of 5. I would restart the encounter, but my friends Craig and Matt are both watching, and I would feel lame if I restarted in front of them. I want to look like I'm a cool Last of Us master. So I forced Joel to limp limply forward. I don't think I ever actually used that health pack throughout the rest of this playthrough. I guess we'll see, but I'm pretty sure I get to the end of the game with that bad boy. I wanted it so bad, and then when I got it, I didn't even need it. We sneak past the super truck and have to maneuver through a building and down some alleyways. I've always dealt with this section by running through it in a wild panic, and it has always worked. I'm not sure exactly how the game cued me to start running. It just always seemed like the clear thing to do. I guess the super truck firing wildly in my direction was probably the main impetus for locomotion. Unfortunately, with my single health bar, I can't make any mistakes. There's a red glowing border around the screen, and any stray bullet is enough to take me out. The best strategy turns out to be starting a lot of fights that I don't finish. I punch enemies once or twice, then keep running as they try to get their bearings. It takes 10 tries max, and I'm out of there. No problem. Henry and Sam. I'm starting to feel like the way I proclaim every section title, it's like I'm one of those dudes who stands next to the throne and just announces people that come in. Henry and Sam. We head through a building and climb the fire escape, then creep along the building's outer edge. Wait, hold up. There goes the super truck. Don't make any noise. Don't! Oh, it's gone. Close one, Ellie! That was real close! Oh, sorry. I'm yelling. I yell sometimes! Super trucks freak me out! I would love to have someone else read the audiobook of this and just see how they would deal with my constant use of all caps. I feel like a fancy British narrator would have a better method than just blowing out their voice, literally yelling. The way the super truck keeps pursuing Joel and Ellie is a little gamey, as in game-like. But maybe these guys really don't have anything else to do. Chasing tourists is their life. There's a little side story about a woman who escaped one of their ambushes, and the hunters spent all day tracking her. I guess that makes sense. If you walk into their spider web, the hunters have no other concerns besides finding you. They're not just gonna let you leave. We hop through a window, and Henry punches Joel right in the head. Hey, I'm almost dead, Henry. Watch it. I really like Henry's actor. See, this is a great example of how this book is written for people that know The Last of Us. You think I'm going to explain Henry and Sam? Fuck no, I'm not. If you don't know who Henry and Sam is, then what are you doing here? Get out of here. Go play The Last of Us, you fuck. I really like Henry's actor. It's easy to forget the names of secondary characters in video games, and Henry is certainly one of those. But I always remember Sam because of the way that Henry introduces him. This is Sam. There's something about his inflection that makes that line stick with me. If only Henry had introduced himself with such panache. Performance. An actor's talent can be an enormous help in bringing a character to life. How's that for an obvious statement? But let me shore up my pedestrian observation with an example. In the whirlwind of dog shit that was the Far Cry 3 storyline, I don't think it's that the writers accidentally nailed it with one character. There wasn't one special scribe who wrote Voss who knew what he was doing, while everyone else just struggled not to swallow their own tongue. It was the actor who made that character work. Without Michael Mando, Voss would have sucked just as much as the rest of Far Cry 3's cadre of idiots. Another fine example is Lee from The Walking Dead. I read that the original voice actor was replaced at the last moment, and it was clearly a good move. Lee was an amazing character in a game that I think was otherwise very overrated. I could nitpick about pretty much every Walking Dead character, but let's just generalize. Telltale's The Walking Dead was full of melodramatic knobheads who continually made hysterical choices which caused me to wish actively for all of their deaths. But not Lee. Lee was fantastic. It's possible that Lee was more carefully scripted than the other characters. He was the main protagonist, after all. But my money rests on the actor, a guy named Dave Fennoy. There's a sense of gravitas to Lee, which I think managed to turn off the critical switch in my head. The Walking Dead was populated with characters who seemed more like placeholders for how a real person in their situation would act. But I believed in Lee. I liked him. He seemed like a real guy. Right now, I'm sitting outside on a beautiful day, but thinking about Lee's fate is making me feel sad. That's a pretty incredible character, and without Dave Fennoy, it seems likely that Lee would have irked me, the same way all the other characters did. Cheers, Dave. And cheers, Mando. Video game acting is clearly not easy, but you guys did real good. That's weird too, like even, obviously some voice actors are just some actors, just better than others. But I thought it was one of the things that was so interesting about The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite coming out in the same year. I think I already said this, but just that, what's his face? Blondie. Troy McClure. What's his name? That Troy Baker did so well in The Last of Us, and on the other hand, Booker from BioShock Infinite is just like so boring and so lame. It's just like, blah. I don't care about this guy. I don't care about this performance. Clearly not Troy Baker's fault. Troy Baker can knock it out of the fucking park, It's almost like he was being directed to be lame in BioShock Infinite. Or like the chick who fucking did Elizabeth's voice. Oh, that is such a good example of how if you can't see how bad an actor that chick was, you have an inability to discern who is a good actor and who isn't. Like, everybody thinks they're the one with good taste, but somebody's got to be the one with the bad taste. And in fact, most people have the bad taste. And that is such a perfect example. She had this dumb California accent, and she performed everything with this really bad, like Shakespeare in the Park, stock, overblown melodrama. It was so bad. It was so bad, but people heard her act. They deliberately hired her. They chose her out of thousands to be this character, and then they allowed every line read to suck. I think it's safe to say Ken Levine and anyone who's a fan of that fucking performance, you're out of your depth. You shouldn't be dealing with voice acting. You shouldn't be dealing with casting because you don't know what the fuck is going on. You don't know, son. You don't know. Well, I wanted to have a puppy, and that's not gonna happen. Game of the Year, 2013. Fuck off. All right, let's get back to this, shall we? The Naughty Dog Secret. Naughty Dog is very far ahead of the pack in regards to character performance. The storytelling in Naughty Dog games seems hugely advanced, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the performances. Man, this was so much better how when I wrote this book, Uncharted 4 wasn't out yet. God, it was so much cleaner. Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 and The Last of Us were so fucking good, and it's just so weird to read all this shit back now, where I'm talking about the Uncharted games. And it's like, but the caveat, the fucking boringness and aimlessness, the fucking stumble and fall of Uncharted 4. It's like, fuck. Anyway, let's revert back to the beautiful world where Uncharted 4 didn't exist yet. I love the characters in Uncharted games, but I always marvel at how little I remember the plot of those games. I've played Uncharted 2 and 3 a dozen times each, and I would struggle to tell you the finer detail of their plots. In those PS3 Uncharted games, everything the characters say sounds right and feels right. There's not a lot of meat on the bones of those stories, but that doesn't really matter because the characters are so compelling and so well performed. If a great performance can do so much to elevate a game's writing, it stands to reason that a poor performance could also bring down a game's writing. Maybe it's not that other games are necessarily so badly written. It could be that the writing just falls apart under poor delivery. Before voice acting became common, I remember being pretty happy with most video game storylines. Granted, I was a kid, but even back then, I was pretty judgmental. When character dialogue was delivered in only text, I could supply the tone and inflection. My mind did a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, a bad performance is inescapable. I can't give a character the benefit of the narrative doubt when they're actively fumbling right in front of me. Man, that makes me think of that game Oxenfree. Pretty average game. It didn't really stick with me, but I didn't really mind it. It had very nice style. But right away, I'm like, I am not dealing with this voice acting. I hate this voice acting. This voice acting is fucking shit. There's no need for it. I'll just read the subtitles, and I guarantee I'll have 20 times better of a time. But at the same time, I loved the music, and I'm like, this music is really good, especially that opening track that opens that game. Fucking shit, man. That is a great song. But I go into the options and either you turn off all sound or no sound. Like, they couldn't even conceive of a world where someone wouldn't want to listen to their fucking C-grade garbage voice acting. It's just like, fuck, man, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? So what I ended up doing is I did turn off all the sound, and I just downloaded the soundtrack to the game, and I just played the soundtrack while I played the game. So none of the songs like lined up with where they were supposed to go, but it's the best I could do. I'm trying to meet you halfway, Oxenfree, you fucking pretentious cunt. You fucking think I want to listen to this terrible voice acting? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to deal with this. Bad voice acting is worse than no voice acting. We don't need this shit anymore. Like, in my mind, I just default now to just like presuming I'm going to play every game with the sound off and with the subtitles on. Because it's just so much better. If you're not going to break your fucking back, if you're not going to really be careful with your voice acting, then don't fucking do it. Don't do it. We don't need it. You don't need it. You're just making games worse. You're making them worse. You're making them seem amateurish. You're destroying any chance you had of the writing being good. So stop it. Fuckers, stop. Back to the book. For big studio games, there's no going back. It's not considered acceptable to release a game that doesn't have voiced dialogue. So, the only option is to go forward. Naughty Dog has their actors perform scenes together, like they're all in a play. They record audio and motion capture at the same time, and I'm sure that what they do is not cheap and is not easy. But expensive though it may be, there's really no other choice. Clunky line readings by people isolated in sound booths are hurting the rest of a team's work. Having a bad performance is literally worse than having no performance at all. The situation is clear. It's time for narrative video games to evolve, and one company has already shown how it can be done. I know it'll take time to catch up, rest of the industry. These are some big shoes to fill, but y'all ain't exactly fumbling in the dark. The blueprint has been laid. The impossible is clearly possible because Naughty Dog has pulled off this narrative miracle like 4 or 5 times already. Blah, blah, blah. You know what? Go download the book if you want to read the rest of that. That's basically it. Just fuck voice acting, man. Fuck bad voice acting. I've had it. I've fucking had it. It was funny back in like Resident Evil 1 and goddamn Elder Scrolls 4. It's like, wow, they did a bad job with this. It's not funny anymore. It's been years of this shit. Years. I'm over it. I'm done. I don't know, it's funny because video game fandom, I mean, it's such a contentious environment. People are such little bitches and argue and complain about everything. But at the same time, they're such sycophants. It's like, but all this garbage that they accept, you know? The baseline of garbage that is considered acceptable in the quality of video games. It's sad. It's fucking sad, Helicopter Man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he winked at me. He knows. Following Henry and Sam. Back to the Henry ambush. Joel is really fucking beaten on that guy. Then Sam breaks up the fight by pulling a gun. Henry convinces Joel that they're not a threat by merit of being an adult and a kid traveling together. The hunters are not very forward-thinking and don't keep any kids around. Joel can't argue with that, or chooses not to, which is very adult of him. Henry's arm is hurt, and he wraps it with a bandage the same way Joel does when he uses a health kit. That's a nice touch, helps sell the idea that the health kit system makes some kind of sense. And we follow Henry and Sam, doing a bit of walking and talking. Henry and Sam are brothers who got separated from their group, and they're planning to meet up with the others, but those others are probably dead. Yeah, no offense, Henry, but that is the story of everyone's life. Third person. A third-person perspective definitely helps alleviate a lot of immersion-breaking player behavior. For example, when someone is talking to you in Half-Life, it's almost impossible not to run and jump all around because you're bored as shit. In The Last of Us, your mobility is reduced, so Joel's movements appear more natural. But you can still manufacture some weird times. While walking to the safe house, I decide to train my gun on Sam the whole way. I can't shoot him, but pointing a weapon at a kid is still pretty disconcerting. Henry, however, remains nonplussed. He really seems to trust me. Yeah, I remember I did the same thing at the end of Bioshock Infinite, the baptism scene. Oh, guess what? Comstock's really Booker, because if you stand too close to the thing, it makes the reality tears. It ages you prematurely, because that's the only way for this fucking cockamamie nonsense story to make sense. And, oh, what a big moment. I'm just jumping up and down. Just like, shut up. Shut up. I don't care. Stay on topic. Man, God, this would not take me half as long if I would just read the book, You know what I'm saying? Just can't do it. Load out! During this playthrough, I'll occasionally jump over to a YouTube Let's Play video in order to check out some detail that I missed. Shiv doors I can't go in and whatnot. I can't help noticing that those players are carrying way more weaponry than I am. My version of Joel is lean and mean, carrying only a shotgun. I never really noticed the size of Joel's arsenal before, but by comparison, it seems huge. The toy store. Next up is the toy store, where Sam wants to take a little robot toy, but Henry tells him to leave it. You can see Ellie pick up the robot and put it in her backpack, but only as everyone is leaving. It's a pretty famous Easter egg, but I'm sure I would never have discovered it without the internet. As a player, you have to have Joel facing away from Ellie while keeping the camera focused on her. It's a pretty weird gameplay situation and a bit of a tricky maneuver just to get a little morsel of storytelling. But man, Last of Us, you're fucking crazy with this shit. Outside we fight some guys, then climb onto a low roof. 2 hunters take posts above us, hiding behind twin air vents. I climb up beside one, circle around, and choke him out. His friend a few feet away doesn't even see me, which is a bit ridiculous, but I reckoned it would work. I've got these enemy vision cones figured out, man. Situations like this make me wonder if the stealth game genre will ever really work. Evolved monkeys that we are, humans are a jittery, nervous, extremely observant species. We can somehow tell if someone's watching us from across the street. We look around so habitually that our situational awareness can seem like ESP. There is no way that either of those guys would have missed seeing me. A realistic stealth game, as I've said before, would be a getting shot in the face game. It would be a nightmare of impossibleness. Remember those old Thief games where you could get those arrows that you shot and they made moss grow on the floor so that your little boots wouldn't clickety-clack on the floor because you just cannot bring yourself not to walk with such authority that your fucking footsteps ring out everywhere? Like, you could literally just slide your feet on the ground. That is the dumbest fucking stealth mechanic in the world. It's funny because, obviously the enemies in stealth games are well reduced just to make things possible at all. So it's funny to do the same to the player. It's like, hey man, this dude, he's got a strut. He has got a strut. He won't not do it. So if you want to strut across a marble floor, you better get a moss arrow. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That might be the dumbest thing that has ever been in a video game ever. Henry's hideout. We make our way to Henry's hideout, behind a locked door in an office building. Henry stole the key off somebody's corpse, and it's pretty weird to be holed up so close to the enemy. I guess there's no easy way to replicate keys anymore, so Henry probably has the only set. Surely someone will take a fire axe to this door eventually. But to hide out for a couple of days, I guess it's all right? Maybe? It still seems pretty close to danger. You better not be messing with me, Henry. I got my gun trained on Sam's head. I can sleep like this if I have to. Ellie tells Sam that she's 14, and he says he is too. The way Henry laughs makes me think Sam is closer to 12. Like he is really reaching by claiming 14. The Last of Us wiki says Sam is 13, but what the fuck do they know? Henry says he's searching for the Fireflies, and Joel says, "You don't know where they are, but you're just gonna drag Sam across the country to find them?" This is expressly why Joel doesn't like the Fireflies. They spread a sense of hope that's dangerous, a kind that gets people killed. The Fireflies pulled Tommy away with empty claims of hope. Now, years later and thousands of miles away, their message is still sowing chaos in people's lives. The Fireflies are causing people to strive for a miracle that ain't gonna come, rather than focusing on practical survival concerns. About Ellie, Henry says, "She doesn't seem bothered by all this." I like that it's seeded into Ellie's character that she's a little crazy. A normal teenager, even one raised in a post-apocalypse, would probably have a harder time with this situation than Ellie does. But Ellie's a weirdo. Some of her springs are already loose, which leaves her a little numb to the pressures of this adventure. They really are, man. The more I think about it, like Joel and Ellie are both like perfect video game characters. Like if you want a character to act the way a video game character needs to act, just to meet the mechanical requirements, they are the personality types that you want. It's so good. Fuck, it's so good. The spotlight fight, my lord. Henry has a plan to escape Pittsburgh under the cover of darkness when the guard detail is smaller. I was hoping the little rest that we take at Henry's would give me full life, but it does not. So I try not to let the gang notice my hobbled limp. Man, do I really make it through this and then the beach and all the way through the sewers and through Ish's hideout and through that fucking suburban part and the sniper? Do I do all of this with one fucking health? I really don't remember using that health pack. Well, I guess we'll see. You and I will learn together, huh? Because I don't remember my own life. Henry says to Sam, "You stick to me like glue, understand? Like glue." Then he does this little nervous gesture with his hands before they head out. This must be a nightmare for Henry. Before this, he and Sam were part of a group. The singular weight of responsibility has only recently fallen on Henry's shoulders. Maybe that's why he's pushing his agenda so hard, insisting on rules like leaving the toy robot behind. Henry is freaked the fuck out. We come to the spotlight fight, and I'll be honest, I don't really understand the spotlight fight. You sneak over and fuck with the generator, and bad guys come out to investigate. They spread out, and I assumed at that point that I could sneak past them, like a puzzle. But it seems like I still need to kill everyone before the little triangle icon will turn green and let me proceed. So it's just kind of a strange, overly complex encounter. I guess the spotlight is to spread them out? Interfering with the generator? I don't know. It's very unclear to me. But we make it apparently pretty easily because I have not written any notes about it. Because that's what I did with this book is I fucking played through, took notes, and then spent 2 goddamn years fleshing out those notes. After this, I started writing a book about Dark Souls. I'm only halfway done it. But I did the same thing. I'm like, can I beat Dark Souls without picking up any items? Which is a nightmare, man. Oh my god, I had to just kick people off of a bridge in the Undead Burg for fucking hours just to get enough stats to use whatever weapons, the game put in my inventory. Whew. Anyway, I only wrote half that book and I got sidetracked, but I'll finish it someday. But in that book, I've actually wrote it out proper as I went, which is probably a better system. Because it was a little weird to play The Last of Us intensely for a week and then spend 2 years writing about that one playthrough, just hoping I could remember it. Because then, times like this, where I didn't write anything down, it's like, I don't know what happened. It's funny because this fight fucks me all the time. I have many memories of having a really hard time with this fight in different playthroughs. But I don't know, I guess this time I just did it. One thing that I used to do that, maybe I did this time too, I don't know. But there is a point where the generator is, if you kind of go to the right of that and hide under an awning, People will jump down right in front of you and you can just choke them out. You can kill half the guys that way. Anyway, then the returning super truck freaks out Henry even more and he turns his back on Joel and Ellie. He leaves us behind to fend for ourselves and he and Sam run off. That dick! There's a Josie and the Pussycats reference. Which I'll have to take my word for. Wyatt said the show was canceled. That dick! But I can't really be too mad at Henry. We did just meet, and I bet he is still feeling those bruises from when Joel punched the shit out of him. In the back of his mind, he was probably looking for reasons to ditch us. He surely must have sensed that Joel was not a safe guy to have around. So when the opportunity came to split, he took it. I'd be more angry if his betrayal caused our deaths. In that case, I would haunt Henry's ass for sure. But you got lucky this time, Henry. Joel and Ellie are also lucky, diving into a garage and slamming the door shut just as the super truck fires a spray of bullets. How this thin metal door stops those bullets, I have no idea. But really, I've got no business talking about bullets and what they can and cannot do. If there were an apocalypse, I reckon I'd be more of a crowbar type of guy. Smashy, smashy. I do remember, though, maybe sheet metal that thin could stop a bullet, because I remember at the end of one of the Bourne Identity movies, Jason Bourne is underwater, and a bunch of people shoot bullets at him, and it's like, oh, is he alive? Is he dead? But he's alive. And then the Mythbusters did a thing of like, that's not a thing. Like, bullets can't go through water like that. Like, bullets hit the water with enough force that they just get slowed and stopped. Because when you hit water at that speed, it's like hitting concrete. It's just like, poof. So if that's true, then maybe bullets don't really pierce through sheet metal either. I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm glad I don't know. I don't want to know. Keep your guns. I got video games. I don't need real guns. Yet. We sneak through an abandoned bar, which has the same layout as the bar from the opening of Uncharted 3. Canonically, it's not the same place, but its inclusion is a neat touch. In Uncharted 3, this bar contains a newspaper which mentions the cordyceps virus. This must be where the membrane between the two realities is most thin. Drake! Can you hear me, Drake? Cutter's gonna fake shoot you. But you already know that. Okay, yeah, talk to you later. Yeah, no, you can borrow it. Okay, cool. A bad guy hits me in the face with a pipe and it makes me laugh. It is so brutal looking and it sounds so fucked up. This game's violence still gets to me once in a while. The guys in the next area have dug in, one patrolling while the other two crouch in wait. I don't have a brick to shake up their pattern, so I think the best bet is to let them see me. That should remix their location a bit. I let one guy spot me and Ellie fires her first pistol shot. Yeah, I forgot she had that gun. The guy runs away back into the other room. What a fucking little bitch. I take the closer bad guys out pretty easily, but with the last guy, I'm right at the threshold of how far away you can stand and still land a punch. Joel kind of slides toward him so that his fist will connect and make the animation complete, and it looks weird. But it is lucky for me. I was 1 pixel away from just punching at the air. I always find this next part dumbly confusing. You have to move a trolley out of the way of a chained door so you can squeeze through the door's opening. But on my first 2 playthroughs, this totally fucked me up. I thought I needed to use the trolley to climb up to the 2nd floor. The trolley's just there so you can't exit without killing all the enemies, but its inclusion completely threw me off twice. So that's the level of intelligence you're dealing with here, in case you needed a baseline. Man, I remember that same thing. I'll probably get to it in Davidstown, but it's the same exact thing. It's one of these, like, I call it a trolley, but I don't know what it is, like a laundry cart thing, or like I don't know, it's like for bussing things around. There's one of those in Davidstown, and I keep thinking I need to climb on those to get somewhere instead of just moving them out of the way. I don't know, it's weird. I'm dumb. Running to the bridge. Now it's a crazed run onto the bridge, away from the super truck. I can't believe I never came up with a better name for that thing than the super truck this whole time. During this chase, there's a small traffic sign that falls over, which I always notice. It just looks kind of wimpy, like it doesn't have much weight to it. It's like a physics object that hasn't been imbued with the proper amount of mass. But really, I got no business talking about traffic signs and what they can and cannot do. Haha, get it? That's a little callback to what I just said about guns. Maybe that works better in writing form. Maybe this whole thing works better in writing form. I don't know. The bridge is out! Fuck! The whole middle section is missing, which is something we somehow failed to notice earlier. I mean, that might explain why the bridge was crossed off on that sign by the coffee shop. But if there's no bridge, why are the hunters guarding this area so closely? The fucking checkpoint, the spotlight. If it's not a valid point for entering or leaving the city, then what the fuck are they doing? They shouldn't need all these spotlights and alarms and shit. Axing the pit. I've said this before, but the Pittsburgh section definitely feels less tight than the other parts of this game. On the plus side, I like the characters of Henry and Sam. They're a very nice example of what can happen when a codependent duo loses one of its members. Pittsburgh itself is also cool and has a bunch of great moments. But if you had to axe one section, this would be it. There are a lot of areas where I just can't follow the story's navigational reasoning, and have to remind myself that I'm just playing a video game. I would hate to see Pittsburgh go, but overall, in this section it does feel like the game isn't quite up to its full speed yet. I am alive! I am alive. This broken bridge reminds me of the game I Am Alive. I didn't finish that game because it kinda sucked. But it did have some really great ideas. When climbing, there's a stamina bar that has to be managed. That game contains a bridge just like this, and climbing across it was a pretty harrowing experience. That's a game fucking Blue Point should remake from the ground up or something. I Am Alive could have been great. For most of the game, you only have one bullet, if that. You can wave your empty gun at people to intimidate them. There was a lot of cool stuff going on. But compared to something like The Last of Us, I mean, no offense, but it was pretty shit. So, pour one out for I Am Alive. Too beautiful for this world. Which is eulogy speak for it was horribly ugly and disfigured. Amen. All of Joel's friends jump off a bridge. That is my favorite section title in this whole book. You get it, right? What if all your friends jumped off a bridge? Would you jump off a bridge? Well, all of Joel's friends, literally every friend he has in the whole world, just jumped off a bridge because Ellie's all he got. She just jumped off a bridge. Joel asks Ellie how many bullets he got left. Jesus, Joel, maybe you wouldn't have to rely on Ellie for bullets if you picked up some bullets of your own. Who would come all this way without picking up any bullets? Do you want to die? Are your fingers paralyzed or something? Pick up some shit. I'm just kidding. I'm proud of you, Joel. Don't pick things up. Besides, if you pick anything up, the devil will get you. Remember those couple things you picked up in Boston? The memory still burns, don't it? Wash your hands, turn around 10 times, say a prayer, never pick up anything, never ever, then everything will be all right. So, with water ahead of us and enemies behind us, Ellie decides we have to jump in the river. Hey, Ellie, you know you can't swim, right? Has that ever come up? On the other hand, we both must be pretty ripe by now, so falling into a river might do us some good. But still, she jumped. Joel leaps in after Ellie and manages to grab her. The current then smashes him back first into a huge rock, and the impact of him hitting that rock is fucking brutal. You could say it rocks. Wow, I wrote that. I really did. All right, well, I'd say that is a section. That seems like an episode. Next chapter, we'll wake up on the beach and we'll go through the fucking sewers. God damn, Isha Sewers, they're such a good section. It's such a well-designed, story-rich, awesome section. But gameplay-wise, fuck me, it's one of the hardest bottlenecks consistently in the game. I've always had a real hard time down in those sewers. And then we'll go through the suburbs, which I love that part too, of just all the blown-out buildings and how cool it is to be able to go through them. It reminds me of, I had a big apartment fire in like 2010 in Toronto. I lived on the 3rd floor of this. It's a pretty small building, just a 3-story building. And the firefighters let me into the building later, which they weren't supposed to do, because what if I fell through the, because one of the firefighters even got injured. Not bad, but he hurt his leg because like the stairs collapsed while they were trying to put out the fire. That building was fucked. But it was so cool. The guy let me go through just to see if I could find anything, and I just found all my old hard drives melted. This recorder, though, that I'm recording with survived that fire because it was in a desk drawer, and the firefighters like took an axe to the wall, made a window hole, and threw the whole dresser out, and that's how this thing survived. Anyway, I digress. The point is, when they let me in, it was so neat to be able to just go through the whole building and go through all the different apartments of the people that used to live there. And it's all burned and like there's no barriers, you know? Just all the doors are open. It's just like one area. And that's how I feel about that suburbs part that's coming up. Is like it's such a cool feeling. Like here's a neighborhood, but here's the neighborhood with no barriers, no locked doors, no property rights, just you can just walk and weave through all the buildings. It's a great area. Then the sniper. So that's all coming up next episode. And if you would like to read the written book version of this here book, you can get it for free in various digital formats at keithcourage.com, my website that's named after the classic TurboGrafx pack-in game. And keep on shooting. Yeah, that's my saying now.